The Gospels were written in Greek, but Jesus spoke Aramaic. So it is true that Jesus and the apostles in Palestine probably spoke Aramaic and not really Greek. Greek was the language of the Roman Empire. Aramaic was a form of Hebrew that developed over many years. And so it is true that Jesus, and likely the early apostles, many of them, spoke Aramaic. But the New Testament, as we know, its original language was Greek. And so the objection here is, hey, you're not even reading Jesus' words. How is it that you Christians think you know what Jesus said when you're not even reading his words? He didn't even speak Greek, he spoke Aramaic. Well, it's quite possible that Jesus did know Greek. I mean, Greek was the ruling power in Palestine at the time. But more than likely, yes, it is true, Jesus spoke Aramaic. But is it true then that if we are reading Jesus' words in Greek, that we are not understanding Jesus' true words that he spoke in Aramaic? Let's take a look at this. First of all, let's ask ourselves, why Greek? Why did the New Testament authors choose to write their Gospels and the books of the New Testament in Greek and not Aramaic? Well, if you'll think about their charge was to take the Gospel into all the world. Well, if you're going to go into the world at that time, what the universal language that almost everybody spoke was Greek, because it was the language of the Roman Empire. Greek was the language of the Romans, and the Romans controlled the known world. So that would be the most widely spoken and the most widely understood language in the world. If Jesus were to be born today, of course he's not, but if he was and he lived in this present age, and let's say that he was born in, let's just pick somewhere, Argentina, all right? More than likely, we would be wise to translate his words into English, because most of the world speaks English, because it's the language of business, it's the language of the world, because the major power is the United States. So we would want that to get into their hands as quickly and easily as possible. So Greek makes perfect sense. So Greek is not some kind of, they didn't choose this in some kind of a conspiracy. They chose it because it fit within the parameters of their charge, which Jesus himself gave them. So that's why Greek. But the real question isn't why Greek. The real question that we're asking here is, can one language be accurately translated into another? That's the crux of the issue here. Can we reliably take Jesus' words in Aramaic, which the apostles heard in their own ears? They were eyewitnesses. And can we translate that into another language, in this case Greek, and get a good translation and be able to trust that we understood Jesus' words as he originally spoke them? And the answer is absolutely. I've talked about this in some other sessions, but let's go back and review the structure of language. The reason that this is possible is because of the nature of language. And people who are objecting to this don't understand language very well, and that's why they ask this question, because they are missing the point that if you don't have his actual words in Aramaic, then you don't have his words. But that's not true. Let's look at the twofold structure of language. Language has a surface structure. The surface structure is the words. So for example, if I were to say, that's a cool car, those are the words that I am using. That's the surface structure. But the deep structure and what we are actually understanding in language is meaning. And I still have to use words to express the meaning. But if I were to say, that's a cool car, then what I am saying, the meaning is, I like your car. It's a nice car. It's a cool looking car. It's a, whatever words you want to use. That's the deeper meaning that I'm trying to get to. And it is because of this twofold structure that I can take the words of one language, that surface structure of Aramaic, I can understand the deep structure, the meaning, and then I can turn around and translate those words into Greek and have an accurate translation. Because what we are translating is ideas, not necessarily words. We're using the words to get to ideas, and then the ideas to get to a new set of words. When we are communicating through language, written or spoken, We are not actually communicating words. Words are not what we are communicating. Ideas, thoughts, those are what we are communicating. Let me show you here. Let's say these two people are trying to communicate with one another. This one guy, he has a thought, he has an idea, or he has a concept that he wants to communicate to his friend. He wants his friend to understand his thought, his idea, or his concept. And so he chooses words. He tries to put those into words. And sometimes you can see people say this. I'll do it often. I'll say, how do I say this? What am I doing? I have a thought. I have an idea, a concept, but I don't know exactly what words to choose to get this idea across to you. So let's say that he chooses these words, I'm scared of the dark. Those words then are communicated or transmitted to the recipient, the other guy, his buddy. Then that buddy must take those words, that surface structure, and he must then decode it in his mind to come up with the thought, the idea, or the concept that his friend is trying to communicate to him. If he does that properly, then communication has occurred. If he does it improperly, communication has not occurred. He might have to say, well, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. Do you see that? So it is because of this that language can be accurately translated. And one of the gentlemen that was bringing up this objection on YouTube, I pointed out to him that he accepts translations as valid all the time. He just doesn't know it. For example, I'm pretty sure that this guy was an evolutionist, and so he probably looked up to scientists of the past, like Copernicus. Well, Copernicus wrote a very famous and influential book in the 1500s called, and I'll try my best here on the Latin definition or Latin title, De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium. Yeah, say that 5 times in a row. It means on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres in English. That's the title. But what I pointed out to him was that it was first published in Latin in 1543. So if he understands the thoughts and ideas and principles that Copernicus discovered, he understands it because it has already been translated into his language. So he's being critical of the New Testament because it translated Jesus from Aramaic to Greek, but he is accepting other documents that have been translated as if there's no problem. And he was forced to accept this argument. He actually acknowledged that that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Here's another one. Einstein's theory, special and general theories of relativity, which we're so familiar with in our culture today. E equals mc squared is one of the formulas that flows out of his findings. Well, guess what? That was not originally written in English. That was written in German in 1916, and it wasn't translated until 1920 into English. So you see, we're already accepting that we can translate. We know very well that translation is a valid way to communicate ideas into different languages. Translation has been done successfully for thousands of years, and the fact that Jesus' words were translated does not affect their reliability whatsoever. We can have an accurate translation, and we can understand Jesus' words in all the different languages of the world because we can translate due to the nature of language itself. So that is not a valid objection. Love you in the Lord.